On January 12th, at about 7:55 in the morning, an empty robotaxi stopped on East Oltorf Street in Austin, Texas. It stopped because there was a school bus ahead of it, opposite lane, strobing red lights, two stop arms extended, loading kids. It was the first vehicle on that road to stop. Then it asked a question. Is this a school bus with active signals? A human being at a workstation in Novi, Michigan answered, no. And the car went. That comes from the National Transportation Safety Board, which released a preliminary summary on March 3rd. Preliminary is the operative word. The information is subject to change, no probable cause has been determined, and the investigation is ongoing. Here's the scene. Undivided road, 2 lanes each way, 35 miles an hour. Clear weather, dry road, broad daylight. The bus westbound in the right lane, the Waymo eastbound, coming the other way. It stopped. Then, according to video cited by the NTSB, 3 passenger vehicles passed that stopped bus while the Waymo sat there. A 4th passed in the right lane. Only then did the remote agent answer no, and the Waymo resumed and passed the bus with the stop arms still out. A 5th car followed it through. 6 vehicles passed that bus. 5 had human beings in the driver's seat. No crash occurred. And this was the 23rd time a Waymo had illegally passed an Austin school bus that school year. So what happened in that exchange? Every company running driverless cars in this country employs people who sit in rooms and answer questions from the cars. Waymo calls them RA agents. Zoox calls them teleguidance tacticians. Motional told a United States senator it doesn't use the term remote assistance operators at all. The distinction they all draw: these people don't drive. They don't steer, brake, or accelerate. The car asks a question, a human answers, and the car decides what to do with the answer. That's not a PR line. It's the actual architecture, written into an industry standard published in 2023, one Aurora says it led the effort to create. The system is real. The question is what it protects you from. In February, Senator Ed Markey wrote to 7 autonomous vehicle companies asking 14 questions about these workers. Aurora, May Mobility, Motional, Neuro, Tesla, Waymo, Zoox. All 7 refused to say how often the cars ask for help. May Mobility called the numbers proprietary and potentially misleading. Waymo said the raw request count is not material to understanding the system and classified it as confidential. Tesla didn't answer. But one company let slip a number nobody else did. Waymo told Markey's office that at any given time, roughly 70 remote assistance agents are on duty worldwide. 70. Against 3,000 vehicles. 400,000 paid trips a week. 4 million driverless miles a week. That number cuts both ways, and I'll be honest about which. 70 people cannot secretly be driving 3,000 cars. If you came in thinking there's a call center steering your robot taxi with a joystick, this is the argument against you. But 70 is also the entire human layer under the largest driverless fleet in America. And nobody will say how often it gets touched. Here's the part that matters most, and I haven't seen anyone else make it. Every one of these companies gave Markey the same guarantee. If a remote human gives the car bad advice, the car ignores it. Zoox. Even if a tactician's information is stale, the robotaxi wouldn't act on guidance that conflicts with reality. Waymo. The system can reject remote assistance suggestions and is designed to refuse path suggestions that are unsafe based on real-time conditions. Motional. If the system detects a risk in the planned path, it won't proceed regardless of what the agent suggested. Read those carefully. Everyone describes the same mechanism. The human proposes an action, and the car checks that action against what its sensors see. That's output validation. It's genuinely good design. But on East Oltorf Street, the human wasn't asked for an action. The human was asked a question about the world. Is this a school bus with active signals? There is nothing to validate. The answer doesn't conflict with the car's picture of reality. The answer becomes the car's picture of reality. That's the entire reason it asked. You cannot cross-check a corrupted input against the sensors when the whole point of the request was that the sensors weren't sure. So the override guarantee, the thing all 7 companies offered as the reason none of this should worry you, is structurally inapplicable to the one documented case where remote assistance appears to have contributed to an illegal maneuver. Because this wasn't one bad morning. It was one entry in a list. Austin ISD puts stop arm cameras on every bus. Since the first week of classes in August 2025, those cameras caught Waymo vehicles illegally passing stopped school buses more than 20 times, at one point averaging about 1.5 a week. Waymo did respond. Federal investigators opened an evaluation in October after a viral video from Metro Atlanta. Waymo engineers found a real bug. The system is built to avoid impeding priority vehicles like buses, and an August software release changed how it predicted other road users' intentions. The result, while correctly yielding to a school bus, it could conclude it was impeding that bus and proceed in order to stop being in the way. That's a genuine machine reasoning failure. Waymo found it, fixed it, filed a voluntary recall in December covering its entire driverless fleet, and self-reported to the federal government. Here's the problem. On November 5th, Waymo wrote to Austin ISD saying updates were in place. 2 weeks later, the district's general counsel wrote back documenting 5 more violations since that letter, including one where a Waymo passed a stopped bus moments after a student crossed in front of it while the student was still in the road. Then the recall landed. And the violations kept coming. December, January, March. Austin ISD asked Waymo to stop operating during morning and afternoon bus hours until it was fixed. Waymo said no. Now, the part Waymo is entitled to because it's true. Austin ISD issued more than 7,000 stop arm violations this school year. The overwhelming majority went to human beings. Waymo's chief safety officer says the company safely navigates thousands of school bus encounters every week nationwide, that there were no collisions in any of these events, and that its safety performance around school buses is superior to human drivers. On the January 12th video, the Waymo was the first vehicle to stop, and 3 cars driven by people passed that bus while it waited. I'm not going to tell you that claim is false. But better than the average driver is a benchmark Waymo chose. The school district's benchmark is different. A bus is stopped, kids are crossing, every vehicle stops. 20+ times, this one didn't. 2 different standards. Nobody in Washington, D.C. has said which one applies. Here's what I only noticed when I went looking for where these incidents are supposed to be recorded. They aren't. Anywhere. Federally. NHTSA runs the Standing General Order on Crash Reporting, the main federal instrument for tracking what driverless cars do wrong. Every company running an automated driving system reports to it. Read the trigger. A company must report if the system was in use within 30 seconds of the crash, and the crash resulted in certain property damage or injury. The crash. That's the whole trigger. Now go back to the NTSB's own sentence about January 12th. A crash did not occur. So a driverless car passing a stopped school bus with its stop arms out while children are boarding is not a reportable event under the primary federal crash reporting system for driverless cars. Not because anyone hit it, because nobody hit anything. And it goes further. Waymo publishes a safety impact hub voluntarily, more than most of the industry does. But look at what it measures. Crash rates against human crash benchmarks, injuries, airbag deployments. The page even says its data updates on the Standing General Order's timelines. So when Waymo says its school bus performance beats human drivers, the hub built to support that claim is measuring crashes, and this failure mode doesn't produce any. I'm not saying they're lying. I'm saying the instrument doesn't point at the thing. 20+ times a robotaxi broke a school bus law in one city, and the only reason any of us know is that a school district bolted cameras to its stop arms and started counting. That's a school district doing the federal government's homework. Markey's report uses the Austin incident as its closing argument and raises 3 questions: whether the agent held a U.S. driver's license, whether the agent got outdated information over a high-latency connection, and why the car followed the guidance anyway. The third is the right question. The first 2 don't survive contact with the NTSB preliminary. The agent was in Novi, Michigan, domestic. Waymo's American agents are required to hold and maintain a valid license with a clean record. A foreign licensing gap did not cause this. Latency? Median one-way latency to Waymo's U.S. centers is about 150 milliseconds by the company's own numbers. The bus was stationary, in clear daylight, on a dry road with strobing lights and 2 extended stop arms. Somebody looked at a school bus and said it wasn't one. That's inconvenient for everybody. For Waymo, because it happened inside the part of the operation the company holds up as most trusted, US-based, licensed, independently audited in 2025. And for Markey, because his 2 headline findings, the overseas workforce and the licensing requirement, would not have stopped the incident closing his own report. One more thing. Several outlets ran this under headlines saying the NTSB determined human error caused it. The NTSB determined no such thing. I'm not repeating a conclusion the investigators haven't reached. That's the pattern across all 7 responses. Not a cover-up. A vacuum. May mobility, 100 to 140 milliseconds typical, 500 worst case. Motional, 300 from car to human, 80 coming back. Zooks, 333 worst case. Waymo, 150 domestic, 250 overseas, which is Waymo's own data, quietly undercutting Waymo's own argument that distance doesn't matter much. Aurora didn't refuse the latency question. Aurora answered a different one, explaining that if a specialist doesn't respond at all, the truck pulls off the freeway safely. Reasonable design philosophy, not a latency figure. And Tesla gave no latency figures at all, while being the one company that confirms its remote operators can actually move the vehicle. Tesla's letter says operators can take temporary control at 2 miles per hour or less, and if direct access is granted by the Tesla system, the enforced maximum is 10. There is no federal standard for any of this. The research Markey's office cites suggests 300 milliseconds can make remote driving dangerous, and the report is careful to say no standard has established the threshold for remote assistance. 7 companies each picked their own number. And the only reason we know any of them is that a senator asked, "So what fixes this?" Not a licensing rule. The agent was licensed. Not moving the desk back from overseas. The desk was in Michigan. Not a latency standard. The bus wasn't moving. Not the override architecture. That protects against bad instructions, and this wasn't one. What would have helped is the thing all 7 companies refused to provide: the rate. How often the cars ask. What they ask about. How often the human answer changes the outcome. We already know the machine-side failure wasn't rare. 20-plus violations across 2 remediations in 1 district in 1 school year. What we don't know is the shape of the human side. January 12th is the one case on the public record where a remote answer appears to have contributed. 1. That could mean it's vanishingly rare. It could also mean it's the only one that happened to be filmed by a school bus camera in a district that had already started counting. The companies say the number is a trade secret, but they're also the ones who told us it doesn't matter, that the car resolves most of its own questions before a human ever answers. If that's true, the number is boring, and publishing it ends this conversation tomorrow. The investigation is ongoing. No probable cause has been determined. A final report with recommendations is expected sometime between late this year and next. The car stopped on its own, every sensor working. It asked 1 question, got 1 wrong word back, and drove past a bus full of kids getting on. Nobody was hurt. The school district asked them to pause during bus hours, and they said no. And nobody, outside of 7 companies, knows how many times a day that question gets asked.